Good day, everyone. My name is Professor Rakgetse John Mokwena. I'm going to present a paper regarding to the significance of fingerprint at the crime scene. Without wasting any time, I will start with the introduction. First, the aim of this article is to address the value of training the crime scene investigators on the time reaction of the crime scene, again to secure of crime scenes and utilization of light sources like fluorescent powders and imprint photography. Furthermore, it indulges the imprint elimination so that both maximize the identification of the suspect. Again, to secure a high conviction rate in court. The introduction continues. From cradle, the grave and every human being carries with him certain physical marks that do not change their character by when he can always be identified with. That implies that each and every human being consists of unique characteristics on the fingerprint, and that fingerprint, if is deposited as a latent print, can be identifiable as unique person. The use of fingerprint has been proven as the most method of identifying criminals who might otherwise undergo undetected and continue their criminal activities as per Layman 2012, page 57. That means that fingerprint is undisputable in court because of its uniqueness. Thus, more cases might be solved by means of fingerprints than by any other single type of physical evidence. Stewart James Nordy, 2009, alluded to that. Adding to the debate, Palmiota 2012 emphasized fingerprints are a valuable form of physical evidence often found at the crime scene, and it depends on the expertise of the crime scene investigator to search, collect, and secure fingerprints for identification. The best practice of fingerprint utilization. Time. Due to circumstances and the environment the fingerprints are deposited on, it is important for the first officers arrive at the crime scene to ensure that they summon the crime scene expect fingerprints at the crime scene as soon as possible so that external environment like rain, exposure to the extreme weather like sun and other factors may not eliminate that or tamper with that print. And then the powders and reagents. When giving the investigators fingerprint expect information, you should brief them accordingly so that they can bring along the equipment which is suitable for that particular scene. They might come up with the reagent and the powders. Reagent, I means the chemicals which can be used to develop the fingerprint at the particular crime scene, whether the surfaces are porous or unfamiliar territories where print might be deposited. The age of print. Although one might say that print can take as much as long time, depend on the environment they are deposited on. If possible, they are deposited on a very conducive environment, like in a cool place. They can be there for over 40 years. And then, although the environmental effects such as dust might gather on top of that print over the years, but as a fingerprint expert, you should be able to remove that dust and then be able to develop and leave that print. And there will be a challenges regarding to that age of fingerprint, because if it was deposited on a surface for a long time, the fatty acids turned into whitish substance. And then when you cannot develop it properly, you might destroy that print. And again, you might also end up having a broken print or damaged print or smashed print. The usual method of developing this and uplifting this fingerprint is using of reagents, because some powders might damage the print. And then as such, when you don't mind, you can use negative photographs to photograph that print so that you can collect it through photographs. Searching. The first officer arrived at the crime scene sometimes have to brief the fingerprint expert, because as a fingerprint expert, you don't have the full detail of the scene when arriving at the scene. But due to the fact that the first officer arrived at the scene while the scene was still fresh, they will be able to brief you where to search and how to search, and then also make some elimination during that period. This emphasized that there should be correlational relationship and teamwork between the fingerprint expert, investigators, and then ordinary police officers who arrive at the complaint for attending complaint of the crime scene. And then the fingerprint experts should be briefed in detail regarding to what happened on that crime scene and then where they could search the print. The methodology. This article employed empirical research design. The researchers interviewed the participants from local criminal records center from the Eastern Cape, whereby all who were interviewed were experts in the field of this fingerprint. As such, purposive sampling was employed because only experts in the field of fingerprint were interviewed in this qualitative research. Nobody else was interviewed because the purpose of this was to get the experience and exposures of the fingerprint expert in these articles. Therefore, I can say non-probability sampling was adopted to outline the key phrases to filter information relevant to the study purposes and the research problem, restricted to fingerprint literatures only. Because when we conducted this research, we only focus on the literature which are linked to fingerprint, and then also experts who are working daily with the fingerprint. That is the purpose of selecting the expert from local criminal record center in the Eastern Cape. Now, let me come to the findings. You remember I talked about time, because time is a very important factor when we are dealing with print. Experts are not summoned to the crime scene in time. They delay summoning the expert. I don't know if it's due to a lack of communication or what, but most of the time the experts are informed about attending the crime scene hours after the crime scene has been happened, and there is a possibility of contamination, distortion of information, and removing of some other valuable information from the crime scene if the experts are not summoned in good time. Then when summoning the expect, the person who is doing so should be able to report everything to the expert so that they may come ready to face the crime scene they are going to work on. Insufficient information is given mostly to the to the expert. As such, they don't come to the crime scene being prepared because they didn't get a detailed report regarding to the crime scene they were summoned to attend. Then we find out that no, there is something regarding to the insufficient information given to the expert. Reagent, we find out since there were no sufficient information given to the expert, some reagent, you cannot take them along to the crime scene. And then as such, you might waste another time going back to the office to collect some reagent so that you can develop the fingerprint on that particular crime scene. But by saying that, that means that there is no training regarding to the first officer who arrived at the crime scene regarding to the reporting in detail about what is happening at that particular crime scene. Age of print. Lack of resources also contribute to that. You may find out the vehicle is dropped into the water. And then by just saying that the vehicle was in drop water, when you retrieve that object or vehicle in that water or in the river, you destroy the fingerprint. Usually, if there is a water-related crime scene, that fingerprint will last over 14 hours. And as such, you should retrieve that object from the water and then allow the dry process to take place. And then from there, you can lift the print from that object. Because why I'm saying that? Due to a lack of knowledge of the people who retrieve the object in the water, they think that there will be no print on that surface of that object, while the fatty acid of littered print make it possible for print to be on that object because there is a fatty acid and salt which compose of the print. And then that print is not water removable because if you mix water and fat, the fat remains on the other side and then the water remains on the other side. Therefore, that makes a practical example of that print will be able to be uplifted on the object which was removed from the water. Then teamwork approach is also very much important in this because lack of communication by the first officers who arrive at the crime scene and the fingerprint expert make it difficult to establish and then to identify and develop proper fingerprint from a crime scene because there was no communication. But if there was a proper communication, and briefing, they will be briefed that please handle each and every object with care for the purpose of not removing the fingerprint on that particular object. Because sometimes the first officers who arrive at the crime scene, they don't regard fingerprint as important, or they don't think there is a possibility of retrieving a latent print from that object. As such, frequent communication is lacking according to our findings. Then recommendation. Immediate reporting of the crime scene to the fingerprint expert is very much important. And then reporting also should be in detail, not just the brief reporting. Powders ensure description of the scene so that you can take necessary equipment and powders to the crime scene. Again, we also recommended that there should be a training for members of the South African Police Service to report in detail about what are they find at the crime scene and brief the fingerprint expert who are summoned to attend that crime scene so that before they leave their offices. And then that is what we are recommending. In conclusion, in forensic science, fingerprint experts use fingerprints primarily to locate, identify, eliminate suspects in criminal cases, identify criminal suspects through the use of fingerprint has proven to be of the effective method for apprehending a person who might otherwise go undetected and continue their criminal activities elsewhere. The characteristics of fingerprint is unique, as I have already explained that in the beginning, and then that no two people have the exact same number of fingerprints. That is the conclusion of our article in short. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And then if there is any question and clarity, I'm still available to answer that. Thank you so much.